Yes, sir. Siddharth, sir, would you like to introduce yourself to the group, please?
Hello, everyone. Uh, yeah. Hello, everyone. This is Siddharth Goenka. I am from Kolkata. I am a personal financial planning and wealth management expert. So I provide training solutions in that. Also, I do the personal financial planning and wealth management of the individuals. Plus, I also provide lots of share trading tips, plus wealth management tips. Yeah. So I am a financial market expert. You can say that in short.
It's a pleasure having you in the room with us, sir. We have our today's guest, Aditi ma'am, also in the room.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, ma'am. Would you like to come on camera and
Yeah, I am slightly camera shy. Yeah, I think that works. Are we waiting for more people to join?
yes, I'm just I'm just setting up the stream. I've just clicked the live button. So yeah, that's it. We are live on Facebook and we are live on YouTube as well.
Oh, wow.
Great, Raji. Should we start?
Yes, sir, we may start.
Yes. So welcome all of you to this Master Prac, an exclusively session for practical aspects of learning and providing with the tips and tools. So today we have with us Dr. Aditi Deshpande. She completed her MSc in Physics from Mumbai University and then went on to complete her MTech, Atmospheric Science from Savitribai Phule Pune University. She did her PhD from Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, Pune, and joined as an assistant professor in Department of Atmospheric and Space Science, Savitribai Phule Pune University in May 2016. Dr. Aditi has always been interested in atmospheric science since her BSc days and further got interested in ocean dynamics and ocean circulation, which she pursued during her PhD. She is currently working on Arabian Sea circulation and is interested in studying ocean circulation changes and the impact of regional climate in the ocean warming environment. So these are really a completely new concept for many of us, but Dr. Aditi has been very fluent and today we'll experience the tips and tools which she'll be floating and helping us to understand how the climate works. Because we have the cold, we all know that we have warm, hot and cold climate. But apart from that, I think today we will get a lot of inputs from Dr. Aditi and she will throw a lot of light on how it impacts on the oceans because we just know these keywords. But today I think practical exposure on all these aspects we will definitely come to know through Dr. Aditi. Just one more thing which I would like to share with all of you. In her free time, she likes to learn dance, which she has been pursuing for about more than 20 years and has recently started learning abstract painting. Wow. Using palettes and acrylic pouring techniques. She's also an avid reader and likes to read everything from politics to science fiction. So over to you, Dr. Aditi. The platform is completely yours.
Thank you so much, Sushant, sir. So, can I just get an idea of the age group of the audience? Can everyone type in the chat boxes what you are studying or what it is that you are learning currently, or generally the kind of audience that we are going to be seeing? All right, 18. So I'm guessing that is you're doing either your graduation, some kind of graduation course, right? Okay, 12. All right. So I'm guessing somewhere between 12 and 20, let's say. So 10 to 20, let's say. That's like a 10 years of gap. So I would like also everyone to let me know what do you think of when you think of the ocean or the sea? Like, what are the first few things that come to your mind when you think of the ocean? Anyone want to say something about that? You can type in the chat box, whatever you feel like. Or if Rajvi ma'am can help us, if she sees anything on the YouTube live or the Facebook answer, she can probably help us out. That would
So
be great.
normally when we see the word sea, we normally have water. That's all.
Hmm.
Or ocean, a lot of water. So little water and lot of water. Apart from
Yeah.
that,
There is one more important thing that we remember, that is salt, right? Because anytime you go to the sea, you see a lot of salty water. And if you go to the Arabian Sea side, along the west coast of our country, you'll see you can literally feel it in the air. Like, the air is also salty. It's very humid. So that is because there's Arabian Sea has a lot of salt in it. But that need not be the case everywhere. For example, if you go to the beach on the east coast, like in Chennai or Pondicherry or Odisha or West Bengal, it is slightly different. And that is because the salt content in the surface of Bay of Bengal is slightly less. So we'll come to those things later. But I just want to give you all some ideas about why ocean become so important for our climate in general, our day-to-day lives. If I give you a very simple examples, if we look at the fish from the Bay of Bengal versus the kind of fish that you get in Arabian Sea, so there is a very distinct difference in the way they are cooked on both sides of the coast. Usually, on the east side, there is a culture of frying the fish and then you introduce them into a curry. But this frying step is not used in the Arabian Sea or the West Coast cooking methods. So there is a reason for that. That is because the kind of fish that you find in the Arabian Sea is very different from the kind that you find in the Bay of Bengal. And that certainly has to do with how hot the temperature of the sea is, how much salty the basin is. And anyone ever tried to figure out why it's called Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal? I mean, they're literally sitting next to each other. But we don't say Bay of Arabia and Bengal Sea, do we? We say Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. So, anyone want to take a guess at why that is the case? Anyone ever thought about it? Because it's something which, if you think about it, it takes you to a lot of different and new discoveries or new learning methods. So the reason why a particular region or a particular body of water is uh, sort of classified as a bay or a sea or an ocean or say river or a gulf. We have the Gulf of Aden, Gulf of Mexico, which is very famous. That depends on how much sides it is enclosed, how many sides of it is enclosed by land, and secondly, what is the temperature and salinity profile. So we are not just looking at the surface, we are going into the ocean, and depending on the upper few meter profile, we determine whether that body of water can be called a sea or not. So because there's a lot of salt dissolved in the Arabian Sea, it is classified as sea. So both Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal are enclosed on three sides by land, but the salt content is different. The temperature profiles are different. So that is what makes it whether it's a bay or sea. So in terms of trying to learn a new subject, I think asking questions of everything like something as simple as why is it called Bay of Bengal and why is it called Arabian Sea, can also give us a lot of clues on, how to study a particular subject. And usually I think what I try to do in my classes is to focus on trying to sort of break down the concepts to its most simplest form possible, try to relate it with everyday life, and also try to sort of bring in examples that actually affect us, that are known to us. Like, for example, anyone, the reason why I asked that, what do you think of when you think of the sea? So someone may think of the beach, someone may think of fish, someone may think of waves, someone may think of sunsets, and each of these clues will tell us more and more about the system that you're trying to study. So in this case, it is the ocean. So also, a lot of people, so I remember giving this lecture to a few school students, and one of them also said we see a lot of thrash, and that led us to a different discussion on where thrash comes from, how does thrash go into the ocean, how long does it stay in the ocean. So I always start off with the most basic things, because all of us, whether we are in school or whether we are in college or whether we are learning at a different stage of our adult life, we all have some experiences, some ideas, some thought processes that we associate with certain concepts. Like, and if we decide to pool in all together, we come up with a lot of different ideas which we can explore one by one. So that is why I asked what everyone thinks, why it's a when they think of a sea. And one important thing that happens, why I got attracted to the ocean, is because of the amount of the kind of role it plays in maintaining our climate. So we have current systems which are, there are cold currents, there are warm currents, there are some famous currents like the Gulf Stream, which actually are very important in maintaining warm weather over the continental regions of Europe. So all of these things become very important when we are trying to study something in depth. But what needs to be maintained is that even if the subject starts getting difficult, or there are always these dry parts which make it a little cumbersome to learn something. So as long as we keep our what you can say, motivation or our interest, if we keep reminding ourselves why we are interested in, it really helps. And that is where all of these ideas come into picture. We tend to keep on remembering what it is that, that why is it that we like a particular subject, why is it that we want to study it. So that is how it also helps in remembering. So if we were to actually just remember the names of, say, current systems, or remember the names of how many seas are there in the world or how many bays are there, it becomes a little difficult. But if you try to figure out why is something called as a bay or a sea, more often than not it will be easier for you to remember, because you will understand that, oh, there is some region which is a very narrow way for a water body to pass, so it can't possibly be a sea, it has to be a gulf or a river. Or there is one particular body which is moving entirely across land, so it cannot be classified as a bay or a sea, it has to be a river or a lake, something like that. So asking questions which need not exactly be pertinent to what you are studying, but it will add on clues. So I feel like in the process of learning, it is important to go beyond whatever you are reading or whatever text you are supposed to learn, and also focus on the kind of thoughts or ideas that you get while you are reading it. And it becomes a very important aspect to improving our learning techniques. So well, about the oceans. So everyone knows that, it's very important to maintain climate, but no one, including the scientists, know entirely. We don't have a definitive idea of why and how it is that the oceans are so important in maintaining our climate. We are getting a few clues here and there. We know certain things about the oceans, but not everything is well understood. So, first things first, let me start off by talking about why this temperature and salinity make a difference. So, when we talk of temperature and salinity, it's not just the entire surface area that we are talking about. There's a lot of things happening below the ocean surface, and you see a lot of different kinds of fish and different marine lives, even when in the areas of the ocean or the sea where there is no light reaching. So there are these fish who actually get to, they're bioluminescent and they actually create their own light. So one of the examples I always give my students is to watch Finding Nemo. So Finding Nemo has a lot of references which are actually taken from real life observations of the ocean. Like there is this scene where the eye mask, which is supposed to have the address of that particular diver, it falls into a very deep area, and there they find this fish which has like an angler on top of its head, and there's a bulb on it, so it actually creates its own light. And turns out there's a real fish like that. It's not something which is from the imagination. So it's very fascinating that for most of such informative or even just entertainment ideas, we don't really need to go to fiction. It's our world is stranger than fiction. So then there is this also another scene where Nemo's dad, they meet with this bunch of sea turtles who are moving across this very strong current. So it's called as the East Australian current, and that is another important current system in the southern hemisphere near Australia. So it is again there is a classification of different classification of currents that are supposed to be very strong, very swift, and turns out East Australian current is one of those. So even when you're watching movies, if we are interested in a particular topic, you'll see a lot of clues to figure out, to read upon. So back to where we were talking about. So there are a lot of different things happening within the ocean, below the ocean surface, and a lot of it is not really well understood by scientists. So there's a lot of scope for trying to figure out what happens, or how whatever is happening below the surface of the ocean has an impact on our weather and our climate. So that is one thing. Second is the current system. So current systems, again, we have the warm current system, cold current systems, which I'm sure everyone must have learned in their schooling. So why are they called cold and warm and cold is something which is fairly simple to figure out. But what do they do? These cold currents and warm currents actually form a cycle wherein um, they maintain the heat balance of our planet. Heat balance means there are some regions which are very hot, like the tropical region, then there are the polar region which are very cold. So how can you balance, how do you keep an overall balance of temperature? So these currents become very important for maintaining these temperature balances. Then of course there is something which is a very recent discovery, that almost 40 to 50% of the earth's oxygen does not come from the forest, it comes from the oceans. So we have ocean plants, there are very microscopic plants called as phytoplankton, which are very important because they produce a lot of earth's oxygen. So that tells us exactly how important it is to protect our oceans, because one of the most problematic things that is happening to oceans is that the temperatures are rising. So we have about 1 to 1.2 degree rise in temperature within the oceans. Then there is also a lot of carbon dioxide which is fixed by the ocean, so it absorbs a lot of carbon dioxide which is present in the atmosphere. And it plays a double role. Not only does it give us oxygen, but it also absorbs a lot of carbon dioxide. And if we were to change the temperature, the capacity of the oceans to absorb the carbon dioxide will change along with it. So that is one problem which we are facing as of now. Second problem is that of pollution. So, everything that is left off into the drains goes essentially into the sea. So, all of our waste material, all of the dirty, toxic water, toxic dissolvents, sometimes even medicinal equipment. So, during this COVID system, they found a lot of masks, disposable masks, floating in the ocean, which are very harmful for the marine life. So all of these things are essentially posing a threat to the health of the ocean. And it is important to, of course, take a few steps which will help us uh, protect the ocean. But what is really important is to ask our governments to make good policies which will protect the ocean. So because this government policy making is something which is on a different lecture altogether, let us focus on what we do. So one of the times when I asked the kids what they think of when they think of the sea, and someone said, there's trash on the beach. So I asked them, what kind of trash do you see? And the one answer which everyone said was plastic. So plastic is something which is becoming very, very hazardous, not just because it remains in the ocean for long, it doesn't biodegrade, but also because it tends to choke a lot of marine animals. So what happens is, if there's a plastic bag floating in the ocean, and there are some turtles which feed on jellyfish, so a bag in the ocean may appear, there are some very thin plastic bags which are almost see through. So these turtles, who are primarily eating jellyfish, they may mistake the plastic bag for jellyfish, and then they end up eating a lot of these plastic bags. That creates a lot of chokage in their stomachs, and dead turtles have washed up on the beaches because of that. Then there was a problem of these plastic straws which everyone throws away. Like, we literally use it once and we throw away, but these straws remain as it is, and they can get lodged in the throats of some fish who may try to eat some other fish, and then this also accidentally goes inside. Or it can get lodged even in the nostrils of turtles. So any kind of plastic that we tend to throw away very easily is very hazardous. And what happens is, it doesn't biodegrade. But what the currents do, ocean currents are very, very turbulent. Like, they tear at these plastic bits, and they keep on tearing at it till it becomes a smaller plastic, and then it becomes almost a microscopic plastic thing. So they are called as microplastics, and they are almost invisible to the naked eye. It's very difficult to see them. Some of them are bigger, so you can see them, but quite a few of them cannot be seen very easily. These microplastics can enter the respiratory system, can enter the digestive system of fish. They can get lodged. They can even enter the human system. If we were to consume fish which has these microplastics and you really can't see them, you might end up ingesting them. So microplastics is a very, very problematic thing. How do we stop them? So this is something which I always tell my students as well. All of those crystals that we get in face wash and face soaps and toothpastes, they are essentially plastic. They are tiny bits of plastic which are supposed to rub on your skin or rub on your teeth, and then you just wash them out. Except that no one really needs that. Do we really need to rub plastic on our faces? Would you really want to rub plastic on your teeth? So this is something which does not get filtered out from anything. It goes straight into the ocean. It affects, it creates toxins in the ocean because plastic ends up leaching out a lot of toxins. It ends up creating a choking hazard for a lot of marine animals. So why do we need them? Why do we use them at all? We can just use something which does not contain these crystals. Simple, just choose something which does not have these crystals, and you are already making a change which is very positive for our planet, for our oceans. Another thing is to reduce, of course, plastic use. We don't need to put plastic into everything. We don't need to carry plastic with us everywhere. Just carrying a cloth bag when you go shopping for your groceries or for your vegetables, that actually reduces the amount of plastic that we need. Then you know buying single use plastics, especially, like, you just use them once and throw away, that creates a lot of waste. So as we have to reduce their use as much as possible. There are, of course, paper straws which are available. There are metal straws which are available. If we carry those with us, then you are reducing the use of plastic when you use straws. So these are, very few things, but they become important when a lot of us do it. So that is something which I always, want to focus on, that people should be mindful of what they are doing, of what they are trying to how they are using their resources for the betterment of the environment. So another thing which becomes important is how much do we consume. So when we tend to consume a lot, your resources tend to run low. So do we really need to consume as much, say, a lot of fish? Do we need to eat only 2 or 3 kinds of fish? There are a lot of fish that are caught by fishermen, but most of the markets will sell only 2 or 3 kinds. So that affects also the biodiversity of population. Biodiversity means if you see a particular animal, how many types does it have and how many they are in number. So let's take the example of cats. You have the house cat, which is a domesticated cat. Then you have cats living in our jungles, like the tiger, lion. You have leopards, you have cheetahs, you have the snow leopard, you have the mountain lion. So cats, I think, other than the polar regions, cats are found in almost everywhere. So that is the biodiversity. How many kinds of cats are there? We find them everywhere, right? That, and how many in number. So if we take just the tiger or just the lions, how many in number are they in the world? So that makes up for the biodiversity. Same thing applies for fish also. How many kinds of fish do we have? How many in number do we have them? So if we keep on consuming just 2 to 3 kinds of fish, it is bound to affect their population. We will keep on killing more and more of those. So how much we consume and how we consume become two very important questions for everyone to understand. And it makes a difference when you want to make sure that people other than yourself. So there are kids being born in 2021. So let's say in another 20 years, that is 2041, they will be adults. What kind of a world would you want to leave for them? You may have your relatives or siblings, or maybe your friends who have children who may also be becoming grandparents. what kind of a world do you want to live for them? When we start thinking of this, it becomes easier to make changes which are important for protecting and preserving our planet. And it always becomes, then it becomes very it's not a very big adjustment to make all of these changes. And there are of course always, you know, it takes a bit of time to get used to it, but not that much, as much as people think there is. So yeah, that's about it that I wanted to share. But if there are any questions, then we can take a few questions, and then if anything specific anyone wants to ask, then I can answer that. What would you say, Rajvi?
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an insightful session. Any questions from our audience? Sushant, sir?
Yes, I have one question. Nicely, it was really enriching experience for us and a lot of new inputs which we have never thought about also, because we just see the sea, we enjoy the sea and go home, but we don't know what lying inside. As you mentioned, rightly mentioned about the microplastics, there are a lot of animals. So my first question is, not many non-vegetarians have fishes. So as you mentioned that microplastics, so does it affect any, does it any disease they get after eating that fish?
Depends on how what kind of toxins are being leached out of those microplastics. So again, you know, studying a particular kind of fish and tracing how much or how badly they get affected by microplastics is a little difficult. But it is safe to say that ingesting any form of plastic is not a good thing for neither that species nor for anyone else that is consuming. So what is happening is, plastic has been found in almost every organism in the ocean. And what happens is the smaller fish get eaten by the bigger fish. The bigger fish are the kind which humans consume. So many a times humans end up consuming those plastics. So unfortunately, this is something other than the ocean component, but there have been samples of microplastic found in rain samples, snow samples in the Arctic, soil samples. So it is actually circulating in our system. So as of now, what the scientists think is that humans are already consuming plastic. So we are actually consuming plastic, even if they are vegetarians and they don't consume any meat, there is still some kind of plastic, some amount of plastic going into our diets. The only way to get over this is to stop throwing plastic into landfills, stop throwing plastic into the oceans. And that will only happen when single use plastic is completely stopped. There can be no plastic which can just be used once and thrown, and even the ones which have reached their cycle. So plastic cannot be recycled infinitely. It has to sort of, maybe it is recycled a few times, and then after that it has to be thrown away. So even that amount has to reduce. So anything which comes into plastic, including toys, this is something which we don't really realize, but you know, when children are chewing or biting on toys with their teeth, can we really be sure that there are, I mean, I know that it is absolutely safe and you know there's a care taken, but why not just give them something else? You know, some, like, I know for a fact that one of my friends, when she had a baby and they were teething, she would give them a piece of carrot. That was their teething toy. So it was nutrition for the baby, free nutrition. So you know, it becomes very just one extra thought that you put into every action will make a difference for whether we are adding to the pollution or trying to reduce the pollution. So uh, there are studies being made on how microplastics actually affect fish, but we don't know if any specific diseases have been found and whether they have been traced back to the microplastic. So that is something that is probably ongoing in the research area. But it is worth exploring because there are different kinds of microplastics that are found in the ocean.
Great. Wonderful. One more question is, you give a very nice example of the movie Finding Nemo. Yeah. So are there any such movies being created, or because there are a lot of videos on National Geography and Discovery Channel. So can you suggest some few topics or which can be explored and get to know a little bit more, which a common man can understand, not technicalities, but which can help us to understand that how we need to take precautions and what we need to do as citizens of India, what precautions we need to take.
There aren't very many movies in the mainstream area. So even Finding Nemo is like a different story, and because they have incorporated the ocean, they have sort of shown some realistic, real known facts about the ocean. But most other movies related to the earth or the environment or the climate change are more or less have what you say, they have fiction and sometimes the facts aren't very correct. So I'm not sure if I'm comfortable giving out names, but few things that are definitely worth watching is there is one YouTube video called as Timbuktu. So Timbuktu is a collective which works in Telangana or Andhra Pradesh. I'm not sure which side of the which state it is in, but they actually worked on turning an arid land into organic agricultural collective. And it's a wonderful story. So they've shown how the first few crop cycles were difficult for the farmers because the land was dead because of the chemicals, and then the land came back to life. So that I always tell is definitely worth watching, because it tells you how quickly our planet can heal if we don't shock it with chemicals, or if we don't abuse it with the amount of trash that we are throwing or the pollution that we are doing. So that is definitely worth watching. I think if I come across them, I will definitely give you some more names on that, because more or less what all the documentaries also and all the mainstream movies also are doing is they tell the story, they tell the problem, but the solution is always something which is very unsure. So I think the one way to approach this is to always ask if we really need to buy something. That is just the one question I ask, that whether it is clothes, whether it is books, whether it is food items, whether it is something else, some accessories, even electronic products. If you just ask yourself whether you really need it, knowing that when you throw out whatever is in your hand is going to land up either in a landfill or in the ocean, it will help us cut down on a lot of consumption. And that, I think, controlling consumption is one of the most important things that we need to address right now, because we are living in a world where we are encouraged to buy more, we are encouraged to consume more, and that is creating nothing but problems. So yeah, that is about it. But if I do come across any better movies, I will definitely I'll definitely message you, and then you can pass on the names.
Great.
But Timbuktu is definitely worth watching. It's just I think like a half an hour movie, and it was made way back in 2007, I think. But it's a very wholesome movie to watch. To see the land come back to life is something very beautiful.
Great. We'll surely watch it. Thank you, Dr. Aditi. Any other questions anybody has?
Thank you so much, ma'am. Any questions from anyone else? Meenu ma'am, do you have a question?
No, actually, I love the session, and last time we had a conversation, but I got to know more clear now this time. There were a lot of
Thank you.
things, especially I still remember your idea of no shopping.
Yeah, so that is also means, you know, when we shop for artificial fabrics cannot disintegrate. They will remain. So, you know, if you take like a fabric, or you take, say, a top made of artificial fabric, it will break down thread for thread, but that thread at the end will not disintegrate. It will stay in the ocean or in the landfill. And then what happens is it starts to I mean, imagine this multiplying with thousands and millions, because so many people are discarding clothes and other materials on a continuous basis. So that, you know, it is just adding. So I always ask myself that, do I really need a new outfit every time I go out? Can I just wear the old outfit? It just, and you will be surprised to know that no one remembers. No one really remembers what you were wearing the last time, so it really doesn't matter. So I always kind of ask myself that, like, I go back to the closet and see how much we have, so that helps. And where it is going, I think that question really makes us question, like, you know, stop in our tracks when it comes to shopping. When you start asking where whatever is in my hand or whatever I'm going to discard, um, how, where is it going to land up? That question sort of helps a lot in deciding whether you really need this or not. So yeah, there is a question in the chat. Mohit has asked, how can I start to save the oceans? Saving the oceans is, it's a question that is plaguing the entire of humanity. And because, you know, it's something that covers 70% of our planet. So it's not just a one person's job, like I said, but yeah, making conscious choices do help. Making sure that we don't consume unnecessarily, making sure that we don't use single use plastic, not using products which have those crystals or beads or whatever it is that is supposed to sort of, I don't know what it is that they do, because they don't seem to help at all other than creating more pollution. So why not just stop buying? And it so happens that once uh, a significant amount of population stops buying those products, the companies will stop making it. They will make whatever is in demand. So if customers demand that these products be stopped, it will happen. That I'm sure of, that they will stop making such products. Other than that, yeah, I mean, just be a more conscientious customer. If you are a fish eater, there is a website called Know Your Fish, and another one called In Season Fish. So what they do is they conducted a study along both the west coast and east coast, and they studied which fish breed during which season. So you know how we have seasonal fruits, like mango is a seasonal fruit. Turns out fish are also seasonal, because there are some months of the year when they're breeding, or their young ones are getting older, they are eating, feeding a lot, and that is the time we need to leave them alone and not consume them. So if we do that, we are giving the fish generations a chance for their line to progress or to proceed. uh, so I use basically recommendations, and I don't consume anything which is on their avoid list. So they have a preferred list and an avoid list. So we are supposed to avoid, we're just not supposed to eat that. And again, if we buy from these small scale fishermen, they actually understand, they know from their from their fathers, forefathers, that, you know, some fish are not supposed to be consumed or caught during certain months. So they will tell you which to eat and which to not eat. They are always, it's always useful. So these two websites seem, I use them. They are, Know Your Fish, I know for a fact, was started by a few scientists who were interested in, again, saving the environment and saving the sustainability. I mean, making more sustainable choices. So yeah, I always recommend that, try those things. Then recommendations for books. I'll have to know what level you are at. So there are, of course, books for school children level, some books for graduate level. I personally teach. I teach master's level students, so our textbooks are slightly different. They are more technical. But okay, you are doing your 10th. I will have to read up and find out. So I will convey the information to Sushant sir, if that is possible, or to Rajvi, and then they can pass on. But
Sure.
I'll give you, yeah, I'll give you some recommendations. So if anyone is following, is active on social media, there is a group called Fridays for Future, which was a group started by Greta Thunberg, and they have local chapters. So there is a Fridays for Future in Bombay, there is a Fridays for Future in for whole of Maharashtra, then Fridays for Future in Delhi, there's a Fridays for Future India. That's a group worth following because they come up with a lot of articles. They come up with a lot of developments that are happening in each of those areas. Like Bombay, Fridays for Future Bombay actually worked a lot on the RA forests, and currently the coastal road. They have a lot of webinars. They're definitely worth following. So I'll look up some books and definitely send their names across.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Can you type the second website name? Know Your Fish is the first. What is the second one?
In season fish.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from anyone else? Okay, I think we have any other questions? Anything you would like to say, Sushant sir or Minima?
I think this session was fantastic. We got a lot of information. I'm going to have a look at the Timbuktu. And
yes, that was my domestic cat walking across the laptop. I'm sorry.
she was also listening to a session, I think.
Yes.
I thought she thought that it is finished, so that's why she has come here.
Yeah.
She's made a guest entry.
Yes. She likes doing that when I'm talking to the laptop.
Well, it's a wonderful, wonderful session. We got to know a lot of things. 2 new websites to go for it. Fridays for Future, it's again the very nice concept. Can you throw a little bit more light on Fridays for Future?
Yeah, so I don't know if everyone has heard of Greta Thunberg, but she's a student from Sweden, I think. Yeah, Sweden. And when she learned about climate change and how it was destroying our planet, she started striking. So she used to strike on Fridays in front of the parliament, and it was called as School Strike for Climate. And then because she used to strike, and she did that literally every Friday for several years. And then when it started coming in news, there were groups formed. So because that Friday was, you know, sort of the day she used to strike, that group came to be known as Fridays for Future. So though it's like the day is saved for making sure that, you know, we keep on talking about what we need to do, how we need to proceed with our actions, and to keep ourselves getting educated. Educating ourselves is the most important. And once we start learning about how bad things are with respect to our climate, it becomes fairly easy to make more sustainable choices. So that is why the Fridays for Future group happened. And now there are several. So there is also Fridays for Future in almost every country. Also, there will be local chapters. So like I said, there's Fridays for Future Bombay, there's a Fridays for Future Delhi, there's a Fridays for Future in Jharkhand also. So they have local chapters, and it is mainly a student-led group. So most of the people who are involved in it are students, and their argument is that they are the ones who will be actively a part of the future that is going to come, and that future is filled with a lot of climate problems. So that is why the idea is that they're fighting for their future. So that is why the name came Fridays for Future. So it's definitely worth going through their websites. I will. It's a student activist group, but considering the way our climate is changing, I always encourage students to join it. Also, you'll get to learn a lot from their website, from their webinars. So before COVID happened, they used to also have some protests, which were usually, sort of, what you say, they used to be on Fridays only most of the time. So they just wanted to make everyone know that their future is at stake. When people ignore the climate, when people ignore our planet and how we are treating our planet, they are actually messing with their future. That is the message that they wanted to give, and they call for action, that good action, I mean appropriate and significant action should be taken to make sure that our planet is not destroyed, the resources are not destroyed. So that is it.
Yeah, I remember she became a social media icon overnight
Yeah.
when she started doing her protests and everything. And a lot of students did join her. They started following her cases and all. So yeah, remember that.
But it's really commendable to see that one student, one child, uh, did something for which she thought was important for her future. That is all that mattered. That to recognize that whatever we do to our planet is going to affect the next generation's future, and that made such huge headlines.
Yeah.
So it's really commendable. And we also have some student bodies in India, some student figures in our country who have been speaking consistently about how we need to care about our planet more than profits. Like profits, we've earned enough. All companies have earned a lot of profits. It's time to stop worrying about profits and start worrying about what is happening to our planet. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm just checking her Instagram, and last post is 8 hours ago, and it's school strike week 150. So she's done
Yeah.
150 strikes already. That is amazing. Oh my God.
Yeah, 150 weeks of strikes. So I think she started when she was about 13 or 14, and she's now 18 plus.
Yeah, she's 18 plus.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an insightful session. All our listeners and our viewers had a great time. And we will keep all of these little things in mind the next time we go shopping. And we'll be really mindful to not buy products that have, small plastic balls. And
Yeah, that is my pet peeve actually. I really wish to talk to someone who works with them and ask them that why was it required to put them in products. So yeah, I mean, thank you so much for having me. Like I don't usually my things are like lectures for MSc MTech students, so this was a different change, and it was wonderful to do this session. So thank you for having me over.
Thank you so much, ma'am.